Okay, morning everyone. Welcome to this discussion session on our on the data chapter of the manual and the workflows. I think let's just give it another minute or two in case there are other people who want to join. I'm going to pop across to the next slide just about the guidelines. In the meantime, please say hi in the chat and let us know how you're doing this morning, and we'll get started. All right, guys, I think let's get going then. So just as a quick reminder of the guidelines, please keep your contributions helpful and considerate for the host and other participants. If you've joined and you haven't done so yet, please just say hello in the chat box and say which institution you're from and let us know how you're doing today. And I think for questions, you're welcome to post questions in the chat as we go. But if I could please just ask people who are here to keep an eye on the chat in case I do miss any questions there. Sometimes there's quite a lot of discussion and the questions can go missing. So, and also if I do miss a question, you're also welcome just to unmute yourself and just let me know and repeat your question there. All right, so we're going to be talking about the data chapter of the NSCF manual and specifically focusing on workflows this morning. So before we get started with anything, I'm gonna stop screen sharing and let's just have some discussion. If anyone has any questions or anything that might have come up after looking at the data chapter or after after the webinar, let's just have some discussion about that quickly. Anyone want to kick off, even if it's just to say whether you like the data chapter or you don't like the data chapter or anything like that? Can I ask if you've read the data chapter? Can you put your hand up with your little little Zoom hand up? Yay, great. Maxine, 1. All right, no, that's great that there's a few hands there. All right, and does anyone have any questions related to the contents of the chapter? Anything about Darwin Core or perhaps the georeferencing protocol that's in there, the fields that we use? All right, I'm going to take it that there are no questions on that then. Then the part of the assignment from the webinar last time was just for people to try and draw up a little mock workflow, a little sort of test workflow. Did anybody manage to do that? And do you have an example that you would maybe like to share and discuss?
Ian, I might be willing to share. So Andrea and I came up with a data flow that you are more than welcome to pick apart for us and make suggestions on.
All right. Do you have it that you can show us on the screen and you can walk us through it?
Okay, so I do click on share screen.
Yes.
And then must I do the entire screen again?
Yes, that's probably the easiest.
Okay, I did click, but I don't see that anything changes on my side.
So you just need to select the screen you want to share and then click share screen.
And share.
Yes. Oh, okay, sure.
So,
all right,
yeah.
Walk us through it.
So we've been fortunate that the NSCF has assisted us, compliments to you and your team, Ian, in migrating our spreadsheet data on collections objects to Specify. And then we figured that, okay, it will be necessary for us, because there can always be little glitches, to clean the specimen data after migration to specify. And we thought then, well, that would largely imply that we take out the physical vial with the specimen inside and compare to our label data, also just to make sure that in the spreadsheet files that we made available to you guys, we hadn't originally already made reports or had maybe reported things not in the way that complies with the NSCF standard. And then we thought, while we are now handling these specimens in order to clean and maybe even update the data or just correct some errors, we could also do some necessary management activities. So that is where our 3 blocks come from. So that the first step that would form part of our cleaning and concomitant collections management activities would be that we check the information on the specimen labels against the data that is currently now corrected on Specify 6. And I think also against our original database or spreadsheets that we did provide. Then that we would check all the following categories, because they are applicable to us as well. And we know that you have moved data into those: the collections object, the determination, the collecting information, host data, collectors, and preparations, as far as we have that information available on our old label data. Then to ensure that all label info is also recorded verbatim, that, for example, when we recapture data from the label, maybe for those who aren't familiar with the collection, at a stage we had lost most of our collections information, all the records were gone, we're checked out, and we basically, for a large contingent of the collection, had to go back and recapture data from the labels. So just to make sure that while we did that, we didn't maybe already incorrectly correct data, such as when it was Transvaal, that we would have already corrected it to Limpopo, just to make sure that we really then have those label data as verbatim. And then if possible, also to ensure that the georeference method is stipulated where applicable.
Okay.
Then while we're handling, a next big step that needs to be done is while we're handling the specimen vials now, that we check the ethanol levels in the specimen vial, and also check that the vial still contains specimens. We have found that some of the vials are present in the collection, but the specimens must have in time been removed and not replaced. And then also another big part of our cleaning and collections management activities would be that we check our taxon tree as it is in Specify for the determination of the specimen, and ensure that the taxonomic tree reflects the correct classification. So if we then go to the first block where we want to check the information on the specimen label and just make sure that the data on Specify reflects everything correctly, we would have the option that the info is correct and complete. Then from our side, no action would be required. We would have the option that the info is incorrect or missing. We would then go correct the info and add missing data according to the NSCF protocols that you've provided in the data management chapter. Or we already know, it's been pointed out to us, that we have some vials that have duplicate catalog numbers, which obviously is a no-no. So in that case, we would then assign a unique identifier and ensure that the old specimen number is still recorded as an alternate catalog number. That would then, for now, complete our, let's call it, Specify information checking. With regards to ethanol levels in the specimen vials, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different options. The ethanol level could be correct and the specimen is present, then no action is required. The ethanol level could be low, the vial not leaking, and the specimen present. What do we mean with vial not leaking? We've got some very ancient specimen vials, and it appears that the glass itself has become porous. so that we have ethanol does not just evaporate, it literally leaks out of the vial. So we would then fill up ethanol to the correct level if the vial is not leaking. If we have the situation where ethanol levels are low, we see the vial is actually physically leaking, but specimens are present, we would transfer those specimens, including all labels, to the new vial with ethanol. Or in a case where we have specimens missing, we would then initiate the deaccession process for that specimen.
Okay.
With checking our taxon trees, we would check if the taxonomic classification on the tree is already correct, then we don't have to fix anything. Taxonomic classification is not correct, then we would correct the taxonomic tree accordingly. And then all these actions or no actions would then combine to that on specify. We would have either made the necessary corrections, or we would not have had to make any corrections, and we would then indicate who still somehow would have to capture that it has been checked and who modified the record and at what date. And as a last action that would then complete the process for that specific specimen vial would be to place the vial back into its correct location. So this is the workflow that we came up with.
All right. Yeah, fantastic.
What you had in mind, but there it is.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. That's really great. I don't know if I'm more excited about the workflow diagram or the fact that you're actually going to do a full review of your whole collection database.
I thought you were going to say that I actually did something.
No, that looks
Okay.
fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. So there are a couple of things just in terms of, I mean, the way that you've got all the steps captured on the workflow diagram here is great. Just in terms of some of the technical details about what the different symbols mean and how you use them, we might want to tweak that. But I think let's go through the workshop today, and then we can discuss that. But this looks really great. I mean, you've got everything captured on there. It's nice and it's clear, and you've got all of the steps needed. This is something that's really nicely thought through, and everything is there. So, all right. So I see Sane's hand is up.
Yes, Ian. I just wanted to know, are you looking for just a workflow, like from the time that you receive a specimen until it is filed, I don't know, in a cabinet or something, or like it was just being explained, it needs to be deaccessioned. Is that it? Or does it need to be a particular reference to what you would do regarding data documentation?
I will answer that question when a little bit later. So we're just going to, so I've got a nice slide describing all of the workflows that we need and what the requirements are and all the rest. And so this is a nice example of a data verification workflow. So that's what this is. It's a data verification workflow, but it's also kind of mixed with there's definitely a very strong curation aspect to this workflow. There's quite a lot of curation in this workflow as well, which makes a lot of sense to have those together. Okay, so I just want to ask then. So we have two other people. So I think let's look at the two others that people said they've done, and then we'll get into the details of the further discussion today.
Should I start sharing, Ian?
Yes, thanks, Kirsten. That was really great to see. Very, very nice. So, Daniela, do you want to show yours?
I did I was in the field when you did your talk last week, so I listened to it then and listened to it last night. So I just did a basic workflow on IDing species, just because you said do a workflow on anything at the end. Okay. So just to see the layout and get familiar with it. So it's very basic.
A species ID workflow.
Yeah, just the different
Brilliant.
steps.
I want to see that.
Okay.
Show us. There we go. We got it.
Up now. Okay.
Yes, we got it.
Okay. As I said, just sort of very kind of step-by-step process. I'm just working on the same thing. Let me just
Great.
that out. So yeah, for us, it's there are far more details in this. As I said, I just did a quick thing to try and see how this would work. So start for us, we assign a unique code to our specimen that comes in, attach label data, collection locality, and make sure that all the information is correct and uploaded to Antweb. Then we go about IDing it, which is, do you know the genus? If not, you key it out using this key. If you do, you check if there's a key to the species group, and if there is, you follow the key out, and if not, then is the species identified? Sorry, I'm going through this very quick because I'm nervous.
Yeah. That's okay. So take us through the steps. These look like interesting steps. Let's just go back a bit and have a look there. So if we go back to so you've got, is the genus known? So if the answer is no, you use Ants of Africa and Madagascar by Fisher and Bolton to ID the genus. Okay, cool. So then we've got
everyone in the background, like that's what specifically my lab does, is we work with ants.
Yes.
So there is a reason why I'm saying use that key specifically.
Sure.
But this is brilliant, and I've never had an issue getting to a genus from that. So then that leads to yes. Okay. And then you move on to the next step, which does the species group have a key? Because not all of our genus do. So if it does.
So, okay, yes, yeah, if it does.
Or do you want to do no is quicker?
Okay,
but it leads you to basically a dead end, because you can compare your ant type images on Antweb. So Antweb is a website that we use that has pretty much all type images of ants around the world.
Right.
So you can compare within that genus, see if you can find something that matches.
Yes.
If you do, can you confidently say that the species is identified? If yes, you can assign the name and stop there. If no, you assign it a unique identifier. So it's for some reason not letting me move that. And contact people who are hopefully researching this if you are able to, which usually you can get their details.
But sorry, can you let's just see if we can bring that down so we can just read that step there. If you use your scroll bar on the right hand side.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So, so you've got assigned species code. Okay, so you're giving it some kind of a code that, so this is a species you can't identify, so you give it like an identifier for that species.
Exactly.
Until further research identify the species or describe the species. Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah, but I didn't want to assign a stop there because I'm kind of like, it's still going to be open for more research in the future.
Right, okay. Okay, all right, cool.
Then if you move to the yes branch, if there is a species key, you measure the specimen, which measurements are usually listed within the species key, and you key the specimen out. From that, confirm measurements against the species description, confirm against images on Antweb, type images, and if you are confident that the species is correct, you can assign the name and stop. If you're not, go back and key the specimen out. Basically, again, often when you key it out, there's certain branches in the keys that you're like, I'm not 100% sure if this is okay, and retry those steps until you find the correct species.
Okay. Very nice.
A little bit of a spider webby one, but
no. So that's great. So what I'm hoping folks are seeing from this exercise so far is how having the diagram really helps you to illustrate the process. I mean, both the process that Kirsten have talked about and that you've talked about is now, it's now an understandable process for me. You know, I'm looking at this and thinking, oh, okay, cool. I now suddenly understand how you guys do ant descriptions, and it's very different to the way that I do spider descriptions. And I'm thinking about Sifiso and how he complains about doing plant descriptions. I'm sure he would love to have something like AntWeb available and one key that you could use to get to all the plant genera. You know, so, all right. Should we, Charmaine, should we have a look at yours quickly then as the last one? No, but this is great. Thank you. Let me just. Charmaine, your speaker is very, very quiet. Your microphone. You can share your screen and let's. I don't know if this. I don't know why your sound is so soft. So you've got your diagram, and so you've done a purchase and supply chain management workflow. You're very, very brave, but it's great to see this. Okay, so there's and then what's nice here is you've also used swim lanes. So in the session we talked about using swim lanes to show how different people are involved, are responsible for different parts of a workflow. So you've got something in vertebrates department. So I presume that's where you guys work. So that's actually like the collections people. And then you guys start a purchasing process. You submit a request with specifications to SCM to buy a product. Okay, so you guys write the specifications and it goes to SCM. SCM manager requests quotations from suppliers on the CSD system. Okay, fine. So SCM actually has to get the quotes. They send quotes to the department, repeat the process if for better quotes if no. So let's see. So send quotation. So they send the quote back to you guys, and you guys select the quote that you want, and you write a submission to the CEO. I see your line got quite squiggly, but that's fine. So then it goes down. So you submit to the CEO, and then there's a question of whether the CEO approves that submission or not. And if no, then it goes back to SCM, and SCM presumably has to find other quotes. So that's a nice loop that you've got there. If it is approved, then it goes to procurement office. So your SCM, okay, so SCM goes to the procurement office. They do the requisition book and they produce the purchase order, and they send to the supplier for an invoice. So they send the purchase order to the supplier, and the supplier must then invoice them. They then delivery by suppliers, and then payment delivers to the department, and then it delivers, and then it gets sent back to you guys who originally asked for it. Okay, cool. So okay, so this is great. So nice to see one with swim lanes. Very, very useful for showing the different groups and their responsibilities. And well done. Applause from Saneh there. And I think anybody that's working at a museum or another institute, like having diagrams like this of the SCM process. If you showed this to SCM, they'd probably be quite surprised and amazed themselves. So, all right, so that's really great. So that's a great job, you guys, for those three. Saneh, your hand is still up. I don't know if it's an old hand.
No, it's a new hand, Ian. I just wanted to say, from everything I've seen, do you mind greatly if we go through mine for like 1 minute, and then you can tell me if that's fine or not?
Yes,
okay,
certainly. All right. Okay. All right, thanks, Jermaine. That's really great to see. So you can stop sharing and let's have a look at Sunny's one quickly. So I think I'm going to say this again, I keep saying it about these workflow diagrams, is that the value of a workflow diagram is in actually showing it to people and walking them through the diagram. You kind of have to, you know, what we're doing here as a group is we're kind of walking through the steps to understand what's in the diagram, and we learn in that process. You know, we're learning about what's involved in these workflows. So workflow diagrams on their own, you know, aren't that useful. Well, they are useful, but where they're really useful is in explaining to people. So two people sitting down and together looking at the workflow diagram to see what's going on. All right, Sunny, do you want to shoot?
No problem. Okay, so over here you can't see much of anything really because this thing is a screenshot of this workflow diagram that was done in Mira. So you can't really see anything, which is why I then added these ones, which are like zoom ins. Okay, so it's meant to be a workflow diagram of the wet collection cleanup, which you know I'm responsible for. So our thing is that my thing is that I need to order, for example, new perishables. You clear out the flammable storage room, you titrate out the preservation liquid, you fill out the new labels, you complete, you know, the specimen washing out steps. And then from there, you go down to the bottom and you actually list what those washing out steps are. Do you see that? Okay, because the idea is that should somebody else have to do what I do, they should be able to, you know, like follow the process. So from there, you insert the wash specimens and fill up the new jars with new preservation liquid, and then it's record keeping. And then for the record keeping, you do the same thing. Now you have these pink notes, which I can't even necessarily read all of them, which are like reminders for what is important. And this is supposed to be below this one here. And so you see like the whole thing being detailed out there. So I had two questions. The reason that I needed you to have a look at this is I had two questions.
Sure.
I see that everybody is using something different. And so what is the name of that software so that I can also use that? Does this look okay? And just a comment is that this squiggly line that people see across with new specimens there on the side, that actually belonged to somebody else's workflow because there were, I think, 4, if not 5 of us using like this board. And for whatever reason, it would lock. And
Yes.
Only the person who's responsible for the thing can actually do the edit. So by the time I went back, I couldn't get this out. And you actually couldn't do any work anymore on it.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I could only take this as is with the squiggly bits like this. So now if I replicate this on the new what is it now, app or something, software that everybody is using, does this look okay? Does this make sense?
Yeah, so I think the main thing, so if you can just scroll up to the main steps up at the top, that one there, so we can see the main steps there. So you've got something, so you've got a sort of a starting point there, which is ordering new perishables. Clear out flammable storage room. So clear out the flammable storage room. That's presumably the room that you guys work in, right?
Yeah.
So you know what that means. Titrate out the preservation liquid, fill out the new labels, complete the specimen washing out steps, insert washed specimen, and fill up the new jars with the new preservation liquid. Okay, so can I ask, so are these tissue samples, or are they preserved? What is stored in these, like in these preservatives?
It's just plants of varying sizes. So you've got small ones that would fit into like vials, but then you've got massive ones that would fit into like 2 and 3 liter jars. So the idea is to just it's a revamp of the entire collection pretty much. I see. Yeah, hence starting with ordering perishables.
Yes, okay. And And so it sounds like you're replacing a previous preservative with new preservative.
Yes.
Do you know what the previous preservative was?
Ooh, FAA.
FAA.
Formaldehyde acetic acid.
I see.
I think.
So toxic stuff, hey?
Yes, yes.
And you're replacing it with?
Ethanol.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. So this is your workflow for basically washing and moving specimens from old preservative to new preservative. And this is quite interesting because you know, we've got guys that are doing this with the herpetology collections, also where specimens were preserved in 10% formalin. So it sounds like it's slightly different to what you guys were using, but it's the same story. But because formalin is a toxic preservative, toxic to humans,
Yes.
we need to move everything to ethanol. And I didn't realize what a performance that is, what a process that is, because I just thought, I mean, I'm a data person. Okay, so I thought I'm a data person and an arachnid person. I've never touched formalin in my life. And I just thought you take the specimen out and you put it in the new one.
Yep. But yeah, let me tell you, a formalin is just another name for formaldehyde acetic acid.
Yes.
It's exactly the same thing.
I see.
Well,
Okay.
if you get it in different concentrations is all that happens.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
As far as I am made to understand. I stand under correction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be, so I think FAA is a mixture of formalin and acetic acid, which I mean, that sounds absolutely horrendous.
Hectic. It smells.
Yeah, it's like, so I think so you've got your main steps here. So the software that we're using, that you saw the other people using, is this diagrams.net software, which you can use online, or there's a downloadable version as well. But Miro does just as well, and we're actually going to use Miro now today when we get started. So Miro is nice for remote people working remotely, a group of people who want to draw some kind of a diagram. It can be anything. It can be a brainstorm where you're just putting sticky notes all over the place, or it can be a workflow diagram, or it can be any other kind of diagram. But no, but this looks good. So I think there are just a couple of small details which we could change in terms of the actual sort of annotation that you've used. But we'll come to that. I think the other really important thing that you've got on your diagram here is you've used these kind of drop downs with extra arrows to show individual steps so your main workflow is the blocks across the top, the blobs that you've got across the top, but some of those, there are quite a few steps involved as well.
Yeah.
And so that illustrates how, so it's almost like those are smaller workflows within the bigger workflow. And so that's something that we sometimes need to deal with when we're drawing workflow diagrams. Do you want to include everything as a step, or do you just want to have like a main step that says wash specimens, and then somewhere else you've got documented all the steps that are involved when you wash a specimen, so that someone can have a look at the bigger overall workflow, and then they can refer to something else. It could be a workflow, it could just be a text document, whatever, that includes the actual requirements or procedures or protocols or whatever it is for that.
Thank you for that, Ian, because my very last question was on that this last one, you know, the two tabs, the two workflows going down, the second one is for data. So if we're talking data, then this would be the one like pretty much to submit, because that's all the data that you would need to log written under that one. Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome
Okay,
stuff then. Thank you very much.
All right. So if you can stop sharing, and then I'll just share my screen again and go back to my broken slide. And let's get cracking. So, okay, that looks a little bit better. So we're just going to go over the sort of notation for, or the way that we draw workflow diagrams again. And the first, there's, if you remember from the discussion, there's basically only 4 elements or 4 kinds of shapes that we use when we do a workflow. And the first are these circles that we use to do the start and end points of our workflow. And my feeling is the best way to start a workflow diagram is to start with you do your start point and your end point, and you describe what kicks off this workflow, what actually triggers you to start this particular workflow. That's your start point. And then your end point, you describe very clearly what the end is, like how can we define the end of this workflow? What is in place? What is different? What is, what is there that we can very clearly say, this is now the end of the workflow. So if we use Daniela's workflow as an example, the end point is where the specimen has either got a species code or a species name written on the label, whatever it is, that's very, very clearly defined. That is now the end point. And then, so that tells you, okay, so my workflow starts when this happens and it ends when that happens. And I now need to work out what all the steps are in between those end and start. So then we have the stuff in between, and we've got decision points, which are these points, which we use these diamonds. So that's anywhere where there's a decision that needs to be taken. And a decision basically has a yes. We try to keep the decisions as simple as possible so that there's a yes and there's a no. We don't want to also have like a maybe or something like that. It must be a decision with a yes or a no. We then have our steps and or our activities of the workflow, which are the rounded boxes, and then the arrows. So that very important is to use arrows to connect everything up. And so the arrows are basically indicating the flow or the direction of the work in the workflow, and it allows you to kind of track where you're going. And this is called business process modeling notation. It's a standardized way of indicating or drawing workflows and all of these shapes and all the rest of it. So you can next time you're at a braai or a party, you can tell your friends that you know business process modeling notation, and they'll be very impressed with you. All right, so like I said, when we start a workflow, we have a trigger. You should have had these first, and then your end must be very clear and well defined. So we've seen some pretty complex workflows today that you guys have demonstrated. This is just an example of a rather complex workflow which we use for the baboon spider atlas. This is a workflow for getting specimen records off of Facebook. So I run a project called the Baboon Spider Atlas, where we are recording photographic records of baboon spiders across Southern Africa, building a distribution database. And about half of our records are actually coming in from Facebook. And we have people who, these people who like to spend a lot of time on Facebook, and they watch various groups on Facebook, and whenever somebody posts a record on Facebook, so here's our trigger, the circle at the beginning, record posted on Facebook is the trigger to start this particular workflow. I'm not going to go through all the steps, but it's so because we had various people working on this, we thought, let's draw up the workflow diagram and let's take everybody through it so that everybody understands the process that's actually involved. But workflows can also be very, very simple. So your workflow diagram is basically the minimum information that you need to make the process clear, if I can describe that. Your purpose is you want a workflow that is basically includes all the steps that you need to reach your endpoint. So it must be complete, clear, and as simple as possible. So this is a workflow for backing up specified databases. So for example, if you are running your own specified database and you don't have an IT department that's backing it up for you, or even if you do, actually, to be honest, you can have a simple workflow like this. It includes 2 steps and that's all. So the trigger here is that it's Friday. So we decide that we're going to back up our database every Friday. So it's Friday is the trigger. We need to start our database backup workflow. We run the Specify backup. So Specify has got a tool that lets you back up the database. It's just a little software that you run and it makes a backup. And then it says we've got store a backup copy on the network drive. And that's the end of the workflow. So we've got the backup stored on the network drive. But my endpoint here says the backup must be in triplicate with 1 copy of the backup off-site. Hang on. So there's actually a problem here, is that my steps don't actually meet the requirements that I've got for this workflow. So we do actually need an extra step here. So it's basically the same. So it starts on Friday, we run the Specify backup, save 1 copy of the backup locally, store a copy of the backup on the network drive, and make put 1 copy onto a memory stick and take that home. So that gives us our offsite copy in case something happens, maybe the whole organization IT system burns down or gets attacked by a virus and the database and all the backups all disappear. So having a backup is one of the requirements. Having a backup that is off-site is one of the requirements for our workflows. And then we touched on this in the webinar as well. So your workflow diagram serves the purpose of being able to think through your workflow and make sure that you've got all your arrows meeting up to an end point somewhere and that all the steps are correct, and then you can play around with it, and maybe if I do it this way it'll be better, and maybe if I do it that way it'll be better. So that's your tool for thinking through your workflow, and then you need to actually document it. You need to have text with a set of bullet points like this, which describes what the workflow is. And then both of these, ideally, your diagrams and your text, should go into some kind of workflows for your collection documentation, or a document. So some institutions call these by different names. So they, I see Fulu's just saying my sound is a problem again. I can't get to my, I hope it's okay. Just shout again if there's a problem with my sound, please. So some institutions call these documents the standard operating procedure documents for their collections. Whether you call it SOPs or whether you call it workflows, it's all basically, it's different names for the same thing. But it's basically just having documentation on exactly how the collection is run, how all the different workflows are run in that particular collection. Okay, so this is coming to your question. I think, Sana, you were asking about what's actually required. And so for the data chapter of the NSCF manual, we've got 12 different workflows over here. I'll just show you some examples, but for example, we've got a data capture and Qaqc workflow. So this is when you get new specimens in, or if you're digitizing specimen data that's in your collection, but it's not where the specimens are in your collection, but the specimens are not on your database. You need a workflow that describes that. We've got workflows for handling born digital data. So that's when somebody brings you specimens. Let's say it's a student and they do a project and they bring you 200 specimens and they give you a spreadsheet with all of the data. What is the workflow for handling those spreadsheets and importing into your database? We have a workflow for field data collection. So this is also something which is a question here, whether this is part of a sort of a broader field work workflow, like, so, you know, the starting point is you get out of the car at the site. The end point is you get back in the car with all of your specimens. What are all the steps that took place in between the start and end to make sure that you've got all your specimens properly collected and all of your data properly recorded before you actually leave the site. We've got a data backup workflow. We've got a data cleaning, editing, and verification. These are different names for the same thing. So this is what Kirsten was showing to us. So there you've got specimen records on your database already, but you want to undertake some kind of verification process to make sure that the data that's on the specimen label or in your catalog book and the data that's in your database actually match. There's a georeferencing workflow. So not to confuse the georeferencing workflow with the georeferencing protocol. The georeferencing protocol is just describing how you assign coordinates to a locality. The workflow is bigger than that. So your workflow for georeferencing, if you think about it, you've got to get your records out of your database. You've got to share them with your with whoever's going to do the georeferencing. You're going to do all the georeferencing, you do the protocol part, and you've got to put all the records back together again. And then you have to import back into your database. So that might be the workflow for georeferencing. There needs to be a data publication workflow. So we want people, well, the NSCF, the idea with the NSCF is that institutions will be publishing their data periodically to GBIF or to the NSCF portal or to whatever platforms are appropriate. And that's something, you know, it's not, we don't want publication just to be like a once-off thing. You know, it needs to happen relatively frequently, depending on how often your database is being updated. You know, you want the users out there to have the most up-to-date data. Just for interest's sake, the Florida Museum, they're part of a specified group that I'm involved with. And the Florida Museum publishes their entire database to GBIF every day. So every day at midnight, they've got an automated procedure that extracts the entire database and publishes. So the Florida Museum data is up to date on a daily basis on GBIF. That's obviously not going to be an appropriate time frame for most institutions. I think it's a little bit extreme. I think probably quarterly or every 6 months or every year is probably going to be sufficient for most institutions. But just to let you know that some people are going and doing this daily. We need a workflow for data and image requests. So that's when someone contacts your institution and says, please will you send us data for this particular family of plants or this particular genus of plants. I've got this particular project. You know, it's basically people asking you for data and you need to have a workflow for processing that. An identifications workflow. So very nice to see Daniela's identifications workflow there. It is the first one that we've seen. So with the workflow stuff that we're doing, but it's very useful to have that, especially when you've got people visiting your institution to do identifications. So you might have a scientist or an expert or a taxonomist coming to your institution and saying, you know, they're going to work through these particular specimens, this particular family or that particular group or whatever it is. And you want to have a document in place that you can say to them, okay, this is our identifications workflow. Please will you provide this information to us so that we can upload it into the database. A lot of the time, the visitors are just left in the collection to do things. I know with a lot of the herbaria, they just write the identifications onto the specimens. They just write names onto the specimens, and then somebody has to go and capture all of those and put them into a database. And so there might be a better way of actually doing that. Specimen imaging workflows. Again, that depends on what kinds of specimens you're imaging, what your workflows will actually be. And efficiency being one of the very big requirements that we have for those particular for specimen imaging workflows, particularly in herbaria, because there are so many specimens. Imaging entire herbaria is possible, because the specimens are flat. You don't have difficult three-dimensional specimens to work with. But you do have to make sure that the imaging processes are efficient. And then we've got workflows for specimen and data embargoes, document digitization. That's basically the full suite. So I'm not going to, so in this presentation, I've got the requirements that are in the NSCF manual for each one of these workflows. I'm not going to go through all of them now because that's going to be quite boring. But what I will do is I will share this presentation link with you guys. Let me just do that now. I should have had it available. So you guys can grab that link and just save it somewhere, store it somewhere. But you're obviously welcome to contact me or Bronwyn or Qaqc at any time if you want the information and get all the slides with the requirements. So the first one is that data capture and QC workflow. So here efficiency is really important. We've got huge amounts of specimen data in these collections that have to be data-based, and we want to get it all data-based as quickly as possible. So that's an important consideration, is to have workflows that are as efficient as possible. Keeping verbatim data, that's a requirement. That's kind of like a data capture requirement. Very often we see verbatim data being interpreted and lost. Interpreted correctly, and data being discarded when people read specimen label data and capture it into databases. So we want to keep the original verbatim data as well as whatever the interpretation is. Quality control and quality assurance or control is an important step. So that's basically you just want to have somebody check that the specimen record is correct. The specimen data that's been captured in a spreadsheet or an RDE file or a database or wherever it is correct when the data is captured. And so it's just a quality checking step that helps to maintain data quality. You will have your finer data cleaning before import. It should say before import. And so it's a good idea when people are capturing data in spreadsheets or RDE files or wherever they're coming from, you need to have sort of a broader, you've got all the data together now and you're going to do one big data cleaning step. OpenRefine is a really good tool for that. And we'll be having the OpenRefine training session in a few weeks' time, where I'll show you how you can use OpenRefine to do data cleaning. It's a really great tool for doing that. And then the last step is just to archive captured data in some way. So if you're not capturing data directly in your database, if there are spreadsheets, if people are using spreadsheets or RDE files or anything like that, those files need to be archived. You don't want to discard them after the data are imported into the data set. All right, I think the other one that I wanted to look at was data requests and then embargoes. So let's just go through to the data requests. So with data requests, the requirements here is that data should be provided to people requesting data in Darwin Core format. So because different collections, databases use different terms, they've got different structure, you know. So Brahms uses different terms to what Specify uses. And sorry, just give me a second, please. Sorry about that. So Brahms uses different terms to what Specify uses, and even within Specify, you can customize quite extensively what you call different things. And so when we send data out to our customers, let's call them, or researchers that have contacted us, they are going to be requesting data from multiple different institutions. They will, in all likelihood, at the moment, what's going on is they get data back in all these different formats, and they have to then spend time trying to figure out how to merge the data and standardize the formats, and it's a big mission for them. So what we want to do is just have a step where we standardize, we extract from the database, either as Darwin Core or have a step to standardize as Darwin Core before sending the data out to people. And then it's an international standard. They can just look at the Darwin Core website if they're not sure about anything. And hopefully that'll make people's lives easier in general. We need to have a step to remove or exclude sensitive species and embargoed specimen records when you serve these data requests. There needs to be a letter that goes out with the data just to say things like, please make sure you attribute our institution for the data in any publications. Please provide any corrections to the data back to us so that we can put them back in the main database. And then lastly, you might have requests tracking and reporting. So your last step before you close your workflow might be to update a spreadsheet that you use for tracking these data requests and how many records you send out and to who you're sending records and all of that kind of thing, just so that you can track that. And I think that's one of the things that Chanel asks for when she asks for reports from the NSCF partners. And then the last one that I've got here is embargoes, specimen data embargoes. And here the only requirement is that there needs to be some kind of approval process in place for embargo within your institution for embargoing specimen records. So this sort of revolves around the whole topic of data sharing in institutions, and one of the things that we've seen in the past is people who basically want to keep all the specimen data to themselves and they don't want to share, or I think maybe another example is where a researcher says, well, I might want to work on this taxon in 10 years from now, and so I'm going to embargo all of the specimen records in the database until I've done that research. And that's not something that we really want to be doing. So there needs to be some kind of managerial approval, basically a supervisor or a director or someone who says, yes, go ahead and embargo those records. So those are just the requirements that we have for all these different workflows. And I thought maybe if there are any more questions or anything like that. I'm not seeing any more questions. Sana, is that a new hand or an old hand?
Is that me? I have a hand up, sorry, lowering it,
Okay,
sorry.
no worries. Okay, so I'm going to save that. So, all right, so in the chat is coming another link here, and you can all just click on that link, and it should bring you through to Miro. I'm going to type a little board here. So this is not something where I need to share my screen. So you need to do this on your computer, and just bring up this. So this is going to be in your internet browser. Okay, I see Bianca's joined. She's the first one in, and we'll just see other people joining now shortly, hopefully. And we're just going to play around in Miro for a little bit for the remainder of this session. So the session goes to 1 o'clock, and we're just going to play around here and maybe draw a couple of workflows. All right, people coming in slowly. So what you can do is when you come into the into Miro, so I am actually going to share my screen so that you guys can see everybody as they come into the session. You guys see it there. So you can see people popping in. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got all of the tools that we use for drawing. So what you can do is just select a tool. It can be a text. You write a little bit of text on the screen. This is basically just a free, we'll start off the first few minutes. You can just type something on the screen or draw something on the screen. There's a little pen tool that you can use to handwrite on the screen. See, there's somebody typing. This is just to give people a little bit of hands-on time with this drawing tool. Play around with the tools a little bit and see what you can draw. There's a shapes tool, so I'll put a little shape on quickly. So like I say, this is a really nice tool for people to work in a team. So you can see everybody's on there, you can see where their mouse is. These people are drawing a little bit, that's good. There's a sticky note, so you've got sticky notes. And you can move your things around as well, by the way. So once you put a sticky note on, you can click on it and you just use your mouse to drag it. Even if you draw just with a pen, you can then click on your drawing and move your drawing. Brachiopods are awesome. Great. Yeah, my flat say I'm not coordinating. This is a free for all. Okay, smiley faces popping up. Yeah, people are being very creative. The other thing that you can do is if you use your mouse wheel, sorry, if you hold Control on your keyboard and then roll your mouse wheel back and forth, you'll see you can zoom in and out. And then if you hold down your space bar, you'll see it gives you a little hand, and then you can use your mouse to drag. That drags the whole screen back and forth, so the whole diagram back and forth. So that's those are just nice ways to be able to navigate around. So you can zoom in, and then you can look at a particular part of the diagram. Oh, somebody loves data. That's great to hear. On that little bar, the little toolbar on the left-hand side, up at the top is will either be a little arrow, or you can, if you click on that arrow, then it also gives you the hand that you can use to drag back and forth. You can drag the whole screen back and forth, and then if you click on the arrow again so that it's blue, then you can that lets you select individual things that you can then drag back and forth. So people are being very creative here. Someone did a like. Oh, I've never seen that before. I just saw like a little thumbs up pop up on the screen. Didn't know that was possible. Whoever did that, if you can do it again, it would be nice to see. Oh, there we go. Okay. How do you? Okay, maybe. Oh, there's another one. Oh, I see. There at the top is a reactions, and you can choose. Okay, cool. So they are also just another reaction. That's nice. That's a way to encourage your teammates. Lots of people. Well, some people starting to ask for help on the screen. Hope that's not too serious. Lots of reactions popping up. Super Fundler is really going to town there with his art. It's looking good. Oh, and we have our first workflow items popping up. We've got an open circle, a starting point, and an arrow. we've got a rounded box. That's great, guys. Happy to see everybody coming in and drawing all kinds of interesting things. So, so Miro really is a drawing tool before it lets you draw any kind of diagrams, which is nice. And so it's not just for workflows. You'll see if you use Miro, you can use it for anything. The only issue is that Miro is very expensive, which is so we're using a free version here, which basically means we only have one drawing to work with. This screen that we're on at the moment is the only one that we can work with. And as Sonny was saying, if you now create a new drawing in this particular Miro account, the previous drawings can't be edited anymore. That's just one of the constraints in the free version. So 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 it's fine for things like this, for a workshop. We're all getting together, we're now playing on it, but you might start to hit the restrictions if you're using it to draw all of your workflows. So we use a different tool, the one that you saw people using, diagrams.net, which is a free thing. You can't do this nice online collaboration stuff using diagrams.net. You know, it's very much like a personal thing. You know, you use it on your own computer, and okay. All right, you guys are going to tell me these drawings over here. Okay, let's see what else we got. Okay, so we've got everybody more or less over there. So what I'm going to do, okay, so I've added a frame here. So the frame is basically like a specific, it's just basically like a specific workspace. So below where you guys are busy drawing, you'll see a frame. It's called frame 7, and I'm going to rename it as test workflow. So if you can all just zoom into this frame so that the frame is the main thing that you've got on your screen, and we're going to start inside this frame. We're going to start drawing a particular workflow. So the workflow. So what? Okay, maybe before that. So just above the frame. If you guys have a look, let's say above the frame and below Sipamandla's drawing of the stick man. I'm just going to add the examples of shapes for you guys to see. So I'm adding a circle there now. So that's our starting and ending circle. And you'll see when you've drawn a circle, so you guys can maybe do this also, maybe just draw a circle somewhere outside of the these. When you draw the circle, it pops up a little set of options. There's an option there to set the full color. So I'm going to set my circle to be sort of a light gray color. But you can fill it as well if you like. I'm now going to add the rounded, looks like what just happened? So if you guys are just wanting to watch what I'm doing, I'm just below the stick man. The stick man that's saying, have a beautiful day. And I've just drawn the one circle, and now I'm adding the rounded rectangle, which is the so that's the activity. And then what you'll see when you add a circle and you click on it, it's got these like little blue dots around the edges, and that's for drawing your arrows. If you click on one of those blue dots, you can then drag it and connect it to another box. So I've just connected the circle to the activity box. I'm just going to add a diamond afterwards. and then if I click on the rounded rectangle, I can connect it to the diamond decision point. I'm just going to add a couple more things here so you can see exactly what I'm drawing. So you guys are welcome to do those. You want to do them as arrows. So you want to have arrows that are connecting your different boxes. If the connector doesn't have an arrow, I think there's an option for the end. You'll see once you draw the line, it'll pop up with options, and you can select there's a line end option where you can select or change the type of arrow without too much trouble. I'm going to delete this arrow. And then there's the little text button as well, the text tool. So you can add little, this is a yes. And with my texts, I like to make the background color white, so they stand out on top of the arrows. Okay, so I see some circles and diamonds, some rounded rectangles, connecting them up with arrows. So try to move some of your shapes around. So when you move the shape, the arrow should be stuck to it. The arrow is like stuck on the shape, and it goes wherever you move the shape. Okay. People drawing some nice. So my voice is still fading, eh? Let's see what's going on. I'm just going to check my settings, guys. Okay, testing microphone, testing. All right, I think it's because I'm facing the other screen and then I'm facing away from the microphone. So I'll just try and hold that. Okay, see Lee had to dash. Thanks, Lee. I see some people are drawing some nice shapes here with colors around the edges. That's cool. Lots of drawing happening. Right, so I'm going to attempt to draw a frame again. Okay, so I've added frame 2. I'm going to change it to, so it's down at the bottom, below all of the diagrams, you'll see a frame. I'm going to see if I can make the color. What's this? Is there a way? Oh, here we go. So the background of the frame is blue. So it's sort of a, not quite blue, greenish blue. So if you can all just zoom in on this frame, and we're going to, please don't draw anything in the frame. We're going to use that frame as our drawing space for our test workflow. Okay. So when you're ready, you can stop drawing where you're drawing. Just zoom in, try zoom in so that the frame takes up most of your screen, so that the frame is taking up most of the drawing space on your screen, and then we can get started. Yeah, I can take it. Thanks. All right, so we've got everybody there. So what I'm going to do is, I'm assume people are now here with the frame. I'm going to make the frame transparent again, so you can just see the borders of the frame. And so I thought to do an example here. We could do a workflow for onboarding a new staff member when they join your institution or your collection, and starting there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the starting point. So we've got a starting point here, That's the start. And I'm going to label it with a sticky note. And I'm going to say, excuse me. Okay, bless me. I'm going to say that, so the starting point for onboarding this person is new employee walks in the door. So it's Monday morning of the time when this new employee starts with us, and that person walks in the door. So what do you think? Remember I said the best thing is to then add the end point and define what the end point is, so that you can work out all the steps in the middle. So how would you guys say, what would be the end point? What would the situation be once a new staff member has been onboarded, fully onboarded with your team?
Ian, I used the yellow note to ask you a question, the sticky note.
So we want to describe the end point of a staff member being onboarded, and so I'm going to put a note below that as well, and let's just ask what like. It's not necessarily the end of induction. That's more like just saying it's the end of the process. But this new person is what? What is different about them at the end of the process compared to the beginning? I think greetings, newbie. Okay, that's on. I think I saw my Qaqc put that on. So maybe could I say that they have their staff card. As a staff card, they've got a laptop. And what else? And the workflows document, the collection workflows document.
They have a desk.
Oh, they have a desk. There's a staff card, a laptop, a desk. So I think let's keep it at that for now. Does that sound reasonable for onboarding somebody? Is there maybe anything major that we've left out?
I don't know, maybe you would want to add that they've met the remaining staff members.
Okay. Employees, then staff card, laptop, desk, collection workflows, document, and introduction. So those are probably the important things. Okay. All right. So, so are you guys happy with that? So nicely, clearly defined start and end points. And we can then put the steps in between. So what I'm going to suggest is that you guys brainstorm any steps. So what you can do is draw rounded rectangles and type the name. So we don't have to put the steps in the right order. You can just say what you think the steps are, and then we can try and put them in the right order. So just put some rounded rectangles inside here. Say what you think the steps are. Put some diamonds in if there are any steps that you think, if there are any decision points or any sort of things, you know, like any decisions, or like the process will depend on this or that. Let's pop a few of those in. Someone, I see, Sana, is it you putting in square rectangles? We want rounded rectangles. Can you change it to a square rectangle?
Listen, I was just following on whoever said greetings newbie, and so if you
Yeah.
yeah, I'll try and change the shape now.
No problem.
It was meant to be funny about the sanitization and taking the temperature.
Yeah.
But it leaves room to put in a diamond, because now you have to decide if they have, you know, like
if they sanitized or not.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe there's a diamond for, is the person, have they got COVID?
Yeah.
Are they, did they,
temperature, is it above something? I don't even know what it is. Do they have symptoms?
Yeah, do they have COVID symptoms?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a few rounded rectangles popping up. What I suggest is to make your background of your rounded rectangle, make your background color to be light gray, so that it's the same as the start and the other rectangles that you see there at the beginning. So you can just see, so if you click on your rectangle, you'll see some options pop up, and there's an option to make the background light gray. I see there's a meet staff step, show the collection room step. Yeah, that's looking good. Sanitize and take temperature. That's a good, I think that it's maybe not necessary for the workflow, but still a good point. Let's see what else is popping up. Okay, if anybody's having any difficulties with the steps, just you can just say. Sorry, if anyone's having any difficulties with the drawing. So if you're having difficulties with the drawing, I see there's a one that says intro. So I can't see necessarily who's drawing whatever. If I see you draw it, you'll see also. You only know who drew something if you see them draw it. So there's one that says introduce to management. And what I suggest is just to put a dark border. You want to put a border around that block. So you've got the gray background. You want to have a dark border also. Get print layout. Get a print out of the. There we go. Dark borders popped in. Okay, so you can see the steps that everyone's adding. Get access sorted. Get access sorted just needs a dark border, please. Get a printout of the layout of the building and collection rooms. That sounds nice. Just a gray background on that one, please. Okay, Eunice, I hope you can hear me all right now. I'm trying to keep this microphone in front of my face. When I look at the other screen, that's a problem. Show them all the policy files. Yeah, that looks good. Tour the collection or office. Okay, so we've got get access sorted. We've got print out. We've got show the collection rooms, policies, introduction to management. So can you see when you write these activities, what's really important is you're describing the activity as an action. Your first word is a verb. Show the collection rooms, show them all the policies, introduce to management, tour the collection office. So that's how you're describing your activities. Very important. Get access sorted. It's like clear what that means. So you're describing the activity, what the actual activity is. Okay. Have the different people representing the different department sections. Let's see what that says just yet. Okay. Give all relevant documentation. Yeah, that's good. And just make the background on that one about the documentation can be light gray, please. I'm just going to delete this frame. There's a frame that came in here. Something's happening now. Frame's gone. All right, yeah, these steps are looking good. No decision points, so there's nothing that we need to think about. Maybe a decision point might be whether the person has worked for us before. Maybe they already have a staff number. Maybe there's somebody that's coming back, or maybe they're a new employee. That might require different processes.
Ian, if you remember,
Yes.
I added the whole COVID thing that's not so necessary, but that as a decision point. But then I had other points to put in down there at the corner there. Yeah, so
Where?
it's a yes or a no type thing. And then I didn't add that. I just carried on with the rest of the stuff.
Right.
Yeah, all that fortunate is hovering over.
So oh, you add the extra steps, eh? Yeah. Drill. Oh, those sound good. Important processes. Hand over keys. They still don't have their laptop. I don't see. I'm just going to delete some of these empty blocks that popped up. Please, nobody take offense if I delete your blocks. Just tidying up a little bit. Okay, so in this particular case, the keys, laptop, assigned workspace, and duties for the week. Internal, external hard drive, telephone extension, a lot of stuff there. So you can also just increase the size of your text in your box so that it's roughly the same size as the other boxes on the screen.
It means
what I mean,
my box is bigger and then taking up more space. I was hoping that you're going to take care of that because I don't know. I'm thinking at the end, you're going to yeah. So I was trying to just keep myself to this little corner here.
No, it's fine. So it looks fine. So most of the boxes are the right size. I think the more important thing is the size of the text. Okay. So So when you work with Miro, you can zoom in and out, and then when you make a box, so you might zoom in really far and then make a box, and then other people who are zoomed out really far will see that box as being very small. So it's kind of like the size of your boxes, dependent on how zoomed in or zoomed out you are. It's not a train smash. You can just change it as you need to get it to be the right size. Show the collection rules. Let's just see. So that's looking good. I think we've got good. I'm just going to delete this one that says process, and make the text there a little bit smaller. So that's looking good. We've got a whole lot of steps in here. We've actually got more steps than what we're going to be able to fit in between our start and end points. Sunny, don't be offended. I'm going to take out the COVID process.
Of course.
Just because we don't need it for this, and I'm just seeing about space. I'm going to make this one a bit smaller. But I think we've got a nice set of steps here that people can. Now the next question is whether there's any particular flow that needs to be followed. Oops, wait, I've lost. Is there any particular flow that needs to be followed in these steps? Is there any order? So is there a particular order that the steps need to follow in order to make sense? So they walk in the door. I think there probably is. You know, we might want to introduce them to the staff before we do anything else. That's probably a nice way to introduce everybody to, where was that? There was something about introduce to management. Where's the one about introduce them to the staff?
At the top, there isn't staff. There's introduction to management at the top.
Okay.
Top left.
Did we not have the different people, or is that different? Talk about their work. So there's one here that says
at the bottom.
Yeah. So maybe that would be close enough. So whoops, hang on, don't run away with it. So there's receive a laptop. So I'm just going to move some of these things around quickly. So let's go. So I'm going to combine those two. So I'll say introduce, and I'm just going to say introduce to staff and management. So I'm going to change your one, Sunny. Staff and management. And I'm going to combine it with this one that says, this one here that says tour of the collection. Collection/office. That makes sense. All of those are together. Okay. Okay, so that can be our first step. All right. Would someone like to join the arrow from the start to the first step? Who wants to jump in and do that? So you have an arrow. All right, that looks fine. Great. Okay, so let's do it like that. Okay. All right, so we've got our first step. Then we've got access, receives necessary documents, and so show the collection rooms. I'm going to take that out because we've got that one already. Receive necessary documents and workflows. Show them where all the policies and files are kept. Those are kind of the same thing, I would say. So I'm going to delete the one that says show them where the policies and files are kept, and we'll just keep this one. So maybe that's the next good step. If I bring that in as the next step, like that. Is everyone happy with that as the next step? Sunny, I think you should let someone else draw the arrow.
Oh.
It's okay. All right, so I'm going to take this out. first aid emergency. So here's the, goes through all the important stuff like, oops. Font size is 36. So anyone, if you haven't drawn an arrow, anyone else can pop in and draw the arrow quickly. Okay, get a printout, layout of the building and collection rooms. So what I'm going to do, this one that says print out of the collection rooms, I'm going to change this into a note because it's nice. It's like extra information that we can add there. So I'm going to add it here and put it in there. So, so if that makes sense. I think whoever added the last arrow, if you can just make the arrow black, because it looks like the arrow color is very pale, and I'm not seeing that. Okay, there's get IT to set up a laptop, IT access. Those two are sorted. Give all relevant documentation for collection. That's the same as that one. So I'm just going to take this one out. And I'm going to get IT to set up laptop, network access, etc. Receive laptop from IT department. So I'm just trying to think through this. We've just got 10 minutes left. Get access sorted, get IT to set up laptop. So I'm going to combine these two. So I'm going to say receive laptop from IT department, set up network access, etc. So that's like the visit to the IT department. Good luck with that one. Oops. Sorry, my bad. Someone can connect that one with an arrow if they like. Keys, laptop assigned workspace, duties for the week, printer and external hard drive, telephone extension. I'm just going to, that's like getting them set up in the office. I'm just going to take the laptop part out. And what I'm going to do is what I'm going to do, Sunny, is I'm going to just I'm going to add a step. So I'm going to take this out and I'm going to make that a note as well. So I'm going to call this assign office, sign and set up office space. And I'm going to, oops, I'm going to move that over there. It's just, sorry, Karine, I'm just going to fix your one arrow quickly. Okay, someone can draw the arrow. And then Sunny, I'm going to move this, control V. What's happening here? It's not letting me change the font size on this. Oh, is this a sticky note? Oh, wait, hang on. Oh. I'm sorry, I lost your thing. I'm just going to add. This here quickly. So it's going to be a desk. What did you say? Desk, telephone.
Desk, telephone, printer.
Printer, yeah. I'm going to add access card, yeah, just because.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's simpler. Workspace.
Well, they've got an office now. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to take this get access sorted off. Then there's this one about workforce wellness. I wasn't sure, I'm not 100% sure what that is. Is it captured sufficiently? Sorry, who was that?
That was me. Can I explain? I
Yes.
wanted to say that the old ICAS, it's that if you remember ICAS, workforce is the new ICAS, and I keep on forgetting the name, and I finally remembered it. But it's about
Yes.
wellness. So during
Yes,
our
yes.
inductions, people will get those cards. So I don't know
Okay.
whether it's gonna go under necessary documents or it's gonna go like under H&S, file and those kind of things.
Yes.
I think it's there.
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, let me put it there. So I'm going to just say wellness service. Add that there. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we basically have it's a simple workflow. So this one is nice. There's no actual decision points or anything like that. It's nice and straightforward. Someone can put in the last arrow to the end point if they like. But that was just a process to show, an exercise to show the process of drawing something like this up. And I think it's quite nice to have this, that in the process of doing this, we've kind of, as a group, brainstormed and thought about what we should be doing for our new staff when they come into the collection or the organization. And it's nice to have it sort of documented like this, hopefully with all the necessary steps. So so I hope that exercise was useful for you guys, and that basically takes us to the end of the session today. We've got 5 minutes left. If there are any more questions or anything, Sunny, I see your hands up. I'm not sure if that's a hand.
Yeah, no, it's a new one. I was just wanting
Okay.
to comment that we didn't have a decision point, and a decision point could actually have been this whole assign office, assign and set up office space. We could have had a person who's willing to work from home, and so instead of assigning them office space and setting that up and all of that, we instead just give them the equipment and everything they're going to go and do from home.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yes,
So
that's a good.
office, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump in quickly and add that as a final point. Hopefully, I'll be able to squeeze it all in. And nice just to have at least one. In the time of COVID, we do have this situation. So I'm just going to, how am I going to squeeze this in here? So we have remote worker. So I like to do my decision points like that, just as simple as possible with a question mark, so that's clearly indicated as a decision point. And there we go. We are running out of space here, so that'll be the yes. So I'm just going to drop the yes on there. It's maybe a bit big, the text. So if they're a remote worker, then we get, sorry, that should be a no. Hey. So they're not a remote worker. So then we have to assign the office space, and I'm going to move this over here. Move that underneath over there. It still belongs there. And then if it's a yes, then we go to that point there. I'm just going to make this a okay, so there we presumably have our decision point. Supermindler's cartoon character joined the party. All right, guys. So yeah, so I hope that was useful for you guys. Just the idea of drawing up a workflow. Are there any questions, any thoughts, or closing remarks before we call it a day? Is everybody happy? Is everyone ready to go forth into their institutions and draw workflow diagrams for everybody else? All right, guys. So I think we can call it a day then. If there are no more questions. Yeah, I think it's been quite enjoyable. I did enjoy the session with you guys, going through this process. And yeah, so Bronwyn, like I say, see your hand, Jermaine, I'll come to you now. So Bronwyn and Qaqc are the ones that are leading these workflows processes in the various institutions. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact them. They're probably your best starting point. And then if there is anything else or anything specific, you can contact me as well. So yeah, so those, they're your starting point. Jermaine, do you want to ask?
Can you hear me? Okay. I just want to ask, what's the assignment for this one?
Sorry, what's the what?
The assignment for this one. Or this chapter now.
So
are we
I think,
still gonna go through?
So to be honest, I hadn't actually allocated an assignment for this particular chapter.
Okay.
Can I get back to you guys about that? I'll ask Fulu to get in touch with you guys if we are actually going to do an assignment. I mean, I think you've got enough. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I think you've got enough with all the other chapters, and you'll see that the other chapters do include developing workflows. So the reason that we wanted to actually start with this data chapter is because start with the data chapter now this year is because this workflow stuff is relevant to all of the other chapters that you're going to be doing going forward. So so you'll probably be able to apply this stuff somewhere there.
Okay, thank you.
Sane?
I now don't know what to ask because I was gonna go back to that board that you had where you had like 11, what did you call them? Workflows, and you were saying that you're answering me that those are all the workflows that are required, and so I thought that's the assignment. I had no clue how I'm going to do a georeferencing workflow, but I thought you wanted all of them.
Yeah, no. So those workflows are the workflows that are required for the data chapter, and so I'll chat to Michelle and Fulu and Audrey about a possible, if they want to add an assignment for this chapter. You know, the thing is that Qaqc and Bronwyn are already engaging with the institutions to develop that list of workflows. But those are actually a formal requirement to have those workflows for each collection or each institution. But yeah, I'll confirm with you guys about it. I definitely would not make writing 12 workflows, 12 data workflows your assignment. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. All right, guys. So I think we can call it a day then. Thank you very much for all of your time and participation. And we'll see you somewhere down the line talking about data again.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, everybody.